Um, Actually, now that someone brought up the COVID situation, this is honestly drawing quite a lot of parallels. For example, what about this question? What do you guys think about the United States opening up its economy before it's fully able to contain the coronavirus? By doing that, they're able to like ensure that there's not to prevent further economic damage. However, obviously more people might die and things like that.
I think it's really dumb because if you're going to relax the regulations right now, more people are going to get infected because no one's practicing social distancing, and then therefore it's even worse to the than opening up right now. And also, I feel like some people are being influenced by Donald Trump not wearing a face mask.
Hmm. That's probably true, actually. Um,
He should probably wear one.
you should probably wear one. um, but the argument on the other side, or first of all, who thinks that it is morally permissible to open up the country for whatever reason? I assume that that's not a popular opinion, but I'm just curious.
If we do open up, all these unemployed people can get their jobs, but risking getting the coronavirus. Yes.
Okay, so it seems like most people in chat are saying it's a bad risk. We're already at 100,000 deaths. Bad idea, terrible, etc. Um, so just to play the devil's advocate, I definitely agree with everyone or most people, but the argument on the other side is that I mean this unemployment rate that's so high means that so many people aren't getting don't have a job, and that's probably fine for people in a relatively financially stable situation, but for people that are in like a really bad financial situation and then they don't have job, um, and they only get like $1,000 a month maybe for the or $1,000 from one time for the stimulus check or something, and they might have some other like safety nets. However, it's still a really awful situation. So is it fair to let them choose whether or not they want to go to work? Like, do they want to take the small risk of getting COVID um, in order to significantly improve their financial situation?
Okay, correction, little risk. I think it's a very big risk
Well,
that they're
um,
it's because think about it, if they get it, they might give it to their children or their mom or dad who's elderly, and they might die from it.
well, okay, sorry, let me rephrase. Like, it's a huge risk in if you get it, it's a huge impact. But the chance of getting it is like, would you rather have a 10% chance of getting coronavirus, or would you like have a 100% chance of like potentially starving to death or something like that? Um, because there are people that really need that job. Isabel, go ahead.
Well, I guess it's probably moral if everybody is aware that they are very likely to get the virus before they make that decision, and they go over that with their family and everything, because that would, if everyone's aware of that, then they get to choose what they do, and they know there's the risk, and I guess that's more moral.
Okay, that's fair. Isabel, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I think all of us here are like pretty well off. Like our parents can work from home, so we're like really lucky. But like for the families who can't work from home and they don't have any income like coming in and the government isn't helping at all, I think that the reopening will help them and they're willing to take the risk for like their own life and their kids.
So this is food banks. Yeah, and Isabel, that's exactly one of the primary arguments for opening up the economy. A lot of people are spamming food banks in the chat, but I mean, sure, they might not starve to death. That might be an exaggeration, but they're still going to suffer. How good? Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that China was fine for closing down for 3 months. No one died. Well, okay, people did die of the coronavirus, but it wasn't the because I think that they got it because I think China's controlled it by March. So then there's actually less economic impact, as if the U.S. just tightened regulations regulations.
Okay, that's a fair point. We're actually, I mean, we're not entirely sure on how exactly China was financially impacted. They're not exactly open about that, but I see your point. Like, if we were to, it could have the opposite effect of even more damaging the economy. Okay, any last thoughts on this? Okay, if not, we're going to move on. There's four more. We're probably going to only have a chance to do two. So let's take a vote. Here, I'll take the options in chat. The first option is what morals should drive driverless cars? In this case is about how, in the event of a collision, for example, who should the driverless car prioritize? Second is, okay, let's skip this one. This one is quite simplistic. I don't think you guys would be interested. Second is cheating. What's the proper way of addressing cheating? And what's the proper way of addressing cheating in like younger kids who might not have, who might like, who have a plethora of other factors in them besides that are different from adults. And then the third option is a science fair in which a student is matched up with another student who is really bad at science. And so the student tells the other student just to not do anything for the science fair in order to not ruin it, and whether or not that's moral and what they should do. So science fair. So let's just take a really quick vote. Who prefers which options? Just choose one option. And please only type it once. A lot of twos and ones and fine with any's. One, one, one. Okay, let's do one. We can probably do one and two then, and we're just gonna skip number three. One is probably the most complicated one out of these, so I'll give everyone a chance to read it. Please tell me when you're done, so I can give a general sense of when we should start. All right, is anyone not done? If you're not done, I'll keep this on the screen. So just like last time, just finish reading it while we're discussing. So the first question is, so generally ethics bowl has the most straightforward question as the first question. And so this is definitely the most straightforward question. Given the choice between endangering 5 lives or your life, should a car in which you are the sole occupant be programmed to endanger you?
I kind of have a question about this scenario.
Yeah.
Would the other 5 people be driving an autonomous car, or are they driving a person-driven car?
Why does that matter? I don't think that matters so much. Either way, you have to make the choice. Let's assume that it's going to crash, so like
Oh.
can't stop it.
I mean, I guess it kind of matters if both of your cars are like created by the same company and your car is like programmed to save you and their car's programmed to save them. I guess they might make some different choices.
That's a good point, actually. Let me think about that. Well, okay, let's actually ignore that first then. Let's just assume that let's say that the 5 lives are pedestrians walking on the street. Just to reduce the confounding factors. So Ariel says each car should be specifically wired to protect the passengers. Do you want to explain why you think that?
Originally, I was assuming that both were in cars, but then the situation changed. So.
Okay. Does the fact that they're pedestrians change your response a lot? How so? Okay, so Ariel says pedestrians aren't able to protect themselves. Okay, so you think that should... Okay, first of all, just to be clear, let's assume that, I mean, obviously, if you can avoid the crash and kill no one, you should obviously avoid the crash and kill no one. But let's assume that one of these has to die, the car is going too fast to stop, and the pedestrians don't have like a really good reaction time, so they're not going to be able to jump out of the way either. So you're forced to make this choice. To respond to Isabel's question, true, but it's possible that, I mean, I'm sure that most accidents like this happen because of a mistake, but it's probably possible for something bad to happen even if no one makes any mistake. There's just like that small inherent risk associated with driving. Oh, says protect the user. Okay. And by the way, if you're raising your hand, sometimes I don't see it, so you can just unmute and talk. You don't have to raise your hand. Cheng Yao says they agree because passengers were the ones who initially purchased the car. So you think that the car should only have the car should only have an obligation towards the person who buys them? Shouldn't the manufacturer also have an obligation to society? Because I mean, cars are part of society. Everyone is part of society. So why specifically does it only protect the buyer? And
Well,
let's assume that there's no programming mistake.
Oh, that's a hard case. Let me think about it. Well, if there's no programming mistakes, I guess the pedestrians would only walk at certain times. If they weren't really walking at the permitted time, they would be breaking transportation rules, and if that happens, it's probably their own responsibility if they get injured or killed.
Okay, that's reasonable. And just to add to the discussion, we have to remember the fact that if we were to implement a rule like this, if we were to say this car should always protect passengers or it should always protect pedestrians, then it's going to apply to every single car. So every single car is going to be doing this. Which brings up the question, like, is it okay to value something's life over something else? Okay, moving on to the second question, actually. Wait, no, not moving on to the second question. I have a question of my own. So what if, let's say that the car is indeed programmed to protect the passenger, as some of you say makes sense. What if the car was given a choice between two groups of people? And this is becoming kind of like the trolley problem, but the reason it's different is because, unlike the trolley problem, this is not one person's decision. This is a decision that will be universal. So let's say that there's a car that prioritizes saving young people over older people. That could make sense. Like if you're driving and you see a baby and an old person and you have no choice to stop, it's probably reasonable to. And sorry about the alarm. There's a car outside my house. It's not something bad. Don't worry. It would be reasonable maybe in an isolated case to protect maybe a baby over an old person. But what about universally? Is it okay for a company to universally say that babies are more important than old people? Okay, hold on. I'm going to close the window. Sorry, the alarm is kind of loud. All right, now it's gone. Now that I closed the window, the alarm stopped too. Okay, so anyone have any thoughts on this? Is it okay to universally value something over another? Or one type of life over another type of life?
What do you mean by universally?
I mean that it's going to make this choice every single time that it's in this kind of situation. So every single time, if there's an old person and a young